All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another Work Life Lunch and Learn. This particular Lunch and Learn is going to focus on understanding reduced seasonal hours, which of course is a hot topic right now because we are in the summer reduced seasonal hours session. And so we are getting lots of calls and questions and emails regarding specifically reduced seasonal hours. And this actually happened last year as well. And Lisa on our team decided, you know what, we really need to do a lunch and learn on this leading into this season because we get so many questions right about now. We thought this may be a really good way to answer a lot of questions that people have about it. And we thought, it'd be wise not to just do it ourselves, but to invite some of our friends along with us that have expertise in different areas who we tend to be calling anyway, asking questions about reduced seasonal hour types of the area of reduced seasonal hours. So I just want to go ahead and introduce our panelists. We have with us Gail Carbo, who is HR Benefits Manager. We have Chris Dudley, who is our HR Leave Administration Manager. We have Denny Haynes, who is our Accounting Systems Infotech Manager. We have Katie McRoberts, who is our HR Compensation Manager. We have James Patterson, who is our Healthcare Payroll Workforce Management Director. And we also have Ward Southern, who is our HR Business Officer. And I'm Azetta Beatty. I am the manager for the Office of Work Life. So let's get started. So when we talk about work life, we thought it'd be just essential to go ahead and do a quick introduction of our services and what we do. So in our office, we are working to assist employees as they are managing their work in their life. We know that people bring their whole self to work. So when you come to work, there's different things that are impacting your life, and you are trying to figure out how am I going to manage all of that and work and be effective. And so the Office of Work Life is here to support you by providing a variety of resources and services that's geared towards helping you as you are managing your work and your life. We also administer the UK at Work survey every 2 years, which is UK's effort to reach out to employees and to identify areas of strengths as well as areas of things to work on. And overall, our goal is basically to improve morale and productivity for our employees. So when you think about the services that we provide a variety of services. One is definitely the workplace, the flexible work arrangements. So that's why we're here today to talk specifically about the reduced seasonal hours. But when you think flexible work arrangements, there's actually a variety of things to consider. There's the flex time, which is where you are pretty much working your standard number of hours per week, but you may be flexing the time that you work them. We have the reduced seasonal hours, which we'll talk about today. The telework options. We have the compressed work week. So all of those things make up kind of a flexible work arrangement. We also provide services related to childcare resources and parenting. One of those is the Big Blue Family Care Childcare Referral Service. That is where we work with UK students to provide supplemental childcare for our employees. That may look like after school care, date nights, weekends, that type of care. It does not replace full-time child care, but it is a supplemental care option. We also manage the lactation spaces and offer guidelines for lactation spaces on our campus. We recently added lactation spaces to the UK interactive map. So if you've ever gone online and you've tried to map your way from one building to another using directions, that is one place where you can find the lactation spaces as well. And of course, we have them listed on our website. We also have a Little Cats Guide, which is a parenting guide. Basically, it's really good for new parents. There's information included in there about FMLA, child care facilities, talking to your supervisor about leave. So there's a lot of information all collected together in this one 10-page document, and that can be obtained from our website. We offer Eldercare Resources and consultations as well. So when you think about elder care, someone may be providing very little elder care or extensive elder-related care. And it doesn't matter if you are local or your family member's local. If your family member can be in another state. If you are a UK employee, we will assist you. The other piece of the services that we offer in the Office of Work Life is counseling. We have Work Plus Life Connections. We have two wonderful counselors that meet one-on-one with employees as well as families to offer family counseling. They don't do couples counseling, but we do refer to another service that does that. They also offer workshops to departments. They talk on a variety of topics, including stress, grief, just anything that you would think of when it comes to stress or mental health. They can talk on those topics. They offer 5 free sessions a fiscal year. They also do quite a few referrals to other UK resources. We find that a lot of people tend to work with our counselors, and sometimes it's work-related stress or it's family or other related stress or just anxiety or life circumstances. So it's a really good idea to just sometimes take advantage of this option. So as we continue to think about our topic today, we're talking about reduced seasonal hours. Sometimes reduced seasonal hours can assist you as you are trying to balance your life. You're trying to harmonize some things, or you're integrating. I have this little image here. If you are online or in the room, you see that balance in the middle because it really looks different for different people. And depending on you and your circumstances in life and what you stand in need of, you have to kind of harmonize is the word I prefer to use actually. But depending on what's happening with you, you may need to flex some things in your life and you may need to adjust some things. So this little image just really talks about, how you are adjusting your time and you managing your well-being and you managing expectations and trying to keep your energy up at the same time to get all these things done. So this is just something to think about, why we have this office and why we are assisting you as you are managing your work and your life. We are here to help you as much as we can. So this little image, as we transition again into flexible work arrangements, I just love looking at this picture of the beach. The beach and the laptop, like, oh my goodness, wouldn't this be a nice flexible work arrangement? And then I look at the one with the people at the coffee shop and they're on their laptops. I'm like, that's kind of more realistic, probably. Because many of us have probably met team members, or if you were collaborating on a project, sometimes you may have met at a coffee shop and worked, and you would consider that flexible work location. So maybe you're working, but because you're maybe working with people in different locations, and you say, let's meet at this coffee shop, or let's meet at this library, or let's meet at your office, or you meet at my office. So we tend to be moving around when we do our work. So we do what is necessary basically to make sure we are doing a good job. So flex work options, there are full-time options and then there's reduced hours option. When you think about your full-time option, you're talking about the flex time. So that again is where you're working the same number of hours, but you are flexing when you work those hours. So it could be that you're working early, coming in early and leaving a little early, or you working late because you came in late, or you are having to leave at 2 o'clock on Wednesdays for some particular reason, and you're adjusting the rest of your week schedule to accommodate those hours. So that is definitely something you would work out with the supervisor in advance. When you think about telework, that's another option where, again, it's a full-time option, but you may be partially working from home or a different location than your office. And that can be a part-time or full-time arrangement. When it comes to telework, it's definitely an agreement you want to consider. We have information on our website about that. Also, we have sample agreements. So if anyone is thinking about a telework agreement, where we can give you a sample just to make sure you're considering everything. And some departments have people that are working like maybe 1 day a week or 2 days a week from home and then coming into the office the other days. And there's other things to consider with that. So if anyone ever needed more information about telework agreement, definitely contact us. Compressed week, that again is where you are still working the same number of hours, but less days. We find that this one is kind of popular during the summer especially, or depending on your department and whenever your maybe slower times are, you may be considering a compressed week. And then of course the reduced hours options, that is where you will find our reduced seasonal hours, as well as part-time, phased return from leave, whether it be a medical leave or maternity leave, or any type of leave basically, and phased retirement. So transitioning on into specifically the topic that we're here to talk about today, reduced seasonal hours. So whenever a supervisor or an employee, whenever they're considering this option, there's definitely some things you want to think through. So you want to think about the person's job functions. Is it, considering if they're going to be reducing their hours, can their job be done in less amount of time? Can they be away, basically, their job function? You thinking about their location. You want to think about the customer service pieces. You want to think about the impact on the team. So this is something that you don't necessarily, you're going to consider if this person is not here for a week on unpaid leave, for example. Will this impact the team negatively, or is there something they can do in advance to make sure this does not negatively impact their work or the team? So that's where you start thinking about those potential barriers to this being successful. You want to consider all of that in advance. Productivity, the projects, the times, if they're reducing their time, their schedule, can they get the work done in this less amount of time? Communication with the team and the supervisor is critical. You want to make sure that everyone knows what's going on. If this person is working 4 days instead of 5, if they're going to be out for a whole week, those kinds of things, if they're reducing their hours, you want to make sure everyone is aware, that needs to be aware of this change. And then, of course, tracking projects and work time. When we talk about working from home or reducing our hours, sometimes because you are changing your location, sometimes you may need to be a little bit more intentional on what you're working on and communicating with your supervisor about that. So also things to think about is who approves these requests. This is a good one. Your immediate supervisor usually approves the request. However, you do need to think about maybe a director or a manager or dean or someone above that person probably needs to know about these changes and may even have a way or say as to whether that happens. So the Office of Work Life does not approve or deny requests. We just manage the process. The immediate supervisor or whoever is designated to make these decisions in your department is the person that approves the request. And also the person that's determining the eligibility. There's some basic eligibility that I'll talk about in the next slide, but if you meet that minimum requirement, then the next step is having a conversation with your supervisor, making sure that you meet whatever additional steps may be there. So office equipment, if you're going to be doing telework, for example, you want to make sure you're using UK equipment, such as a UK laptop. Can this be done in a trial period? Absolutely. We encourage that sometimes. Sometimes that's a way that people feel more comfortable to try this out for a few months if it's a long term. Now we're talking about reduced seasonal hours, so it depends on specifically what your schedule that you're trying to reduce is, and you just want to talk through that with your supervisor. All right. Do I need to provide a reason for requesting flex work? We say no, but sometimes it's nice for the communication to at least give a general reason. Sometimes people want to request flex reduced seasonal hours in the summer simply because it's slower, for in their area. And there may not be another reason necessarily, and that may work for them. Okay, what if the request is denied? If it's denied, hopefully the supervisor will have a conversation with you and tell you why specifically it was denied. Maybe it needs to be modified. Maybe you're asking for the entire summer and they're saying, you can't be gone the entire summer. We need you here some. So just having a conversation with the supervisor, hopefully that will answer any questions if your request is denied. And then very, very important with reduced seasonal hours, please make sure your business officer knows about your arrangements. Very, very important. We'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. So a few little kind of frequently asked question things for reduced seasonal hours. There's 2 types of reduced seasonal hours. One is literally taking a full week off unpaid. That's one. The second one is reducing your work hours. So keep in mind, this option is for full-time employees, full-time regular employees. So if you are reducing your hours to no less than 0.75, so 75%. So those are the two options. And the time frame for that is May 6th through August the 18th. So reduced seasonal hours, keep in mind the word seasonal. It's just for a season. This is not a year-round option. So reduced seasonal hours for the summer is May 6th through August 18th. That is your time frame. When there is a winter reduced seasonal hours as well, and it usually starts about the 1st of December and ends the 1st of February. And the exact date fluctuates a little bit based on the calendar. But so keep that in mind. And of course, I mentioned that regular employees, full-time, successfully already completed the new hire orientation period. Non-designated, non-exempt, meaning hourly or exempt, can take advantage of this. And again, I mentioned that our Office of Work Life does not approve these. We do manage, we do support, we do encourage it, but ultimately the decision to approve is up to the department. Okay, thinking about win-win, we do see this as a win-win because it could be an opportunity to assist an employee as they are managing their personal and professional life. The employee gets to get some assistance with that. And then of course the department saves some money. Also, the supervisor is responsible for reviewing and responding to the employee. So we always recommend that the employee talks to their supervisor prior to submitting the online form, which is required. So make sure you talk to the supervisor first. Feel free to call our office. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might still be processing as you're getting ready to approach the supervisor, but definitely do that. And then once you have the clearance, you can go ahead and submit online. And then the supervisor responds to an email that they receive because you've submitted their information as a part of the form. They reply to us and let us know it's approved or it's denied. And again, they might deny initially because maybe there's something they need you to change about the request. So just keep that in mind. And you can take more than 1 week off unpaid if that is what you're seeking. In fact, we've had lots of requests come through in the past few weeks where people are taking off multiple weeks unpaid. Okay. So you will not accrue vacation or leave time during an unpaid week off. I have a maybe there because an employee, I'm gonna read this statement. An employee who is in a paid status for 1 week or more of the pay period shall accrue vacation for that period. So example, if a monthly person is taking 1 week off unpaid, then that person will receive vacation for that period. Like if you're taking 1 week off and you've already worked 3 weeks. That's why I have benefits here who, if you have questions about that, Gail will be happy to answer those later. So also, when you think about unpaid leave, I just mentioned it needs to be taken in a full week increment. And then, of course, your pay rate is reduced if you are doing the reduced hours, not the unpaid, obviously. If you're doing a reduced hours, you do want to think about your pay rate reduction. And you can call benefits and ask them questions about what is going to look like if I'm considering this. And Gail actually at our last Lunch and Learn said we'd be happy to take those calls to kind of talk you through that, to make sure you have all the information before you make the final decision. So depending on your leave without pay, the reduction in your full-time equivalency, your FTE, the benefits will be adjusted accordingly. So just keep that in mind. Let's see, prior to approval, of course, supervisors will probably want to review the request with their directors or department heads. So I mentioned that earlier. If the immediate supervisor may say, this sounds okay to me, but let me check with maybe the department head or a manager or someone that's in a position above them, just to get a final clearance on that. All right, also keep in mind if you are within this reduced seasonal hours, remember there's 2 options, unpaid week or reducing your hours. Your business officer in the department will execute a position update action in SAP. So you want to keep in mind, that's why you really want to make sure your business officer knows what you're doing so that they can make the update necessary and change it back. So they're going to make it when you leave, but they can do that in advance, but you want to make sure they are aware. And can you change your mind? We ask that if you've changed your mind, gotten approval, done all the paperwork, submitted everything, that you go ahead and go through with it. If there is some sort of emergency situation, then just work with us on that. Compensation. Now Katie is up. So this is where we're going to switch and have our panelists share some insight and information from their perspective. And after we go through and have our panelists share just kind of their tips and things to consider from their area of expertise as it relates to reduced seasonal hours, then we'll take questions from the Zoom online participants as well as those in the room.
Okay, some tips from compensations perspective. We're going to look at supervision oversight. If your pay is potentially going to change, and unemployment. So with supervision oversight, we are, as a supervisor, they would need your direct supervisor would need to look at scheduling needs for the department. If they can't account for somebody to be gone or have to use on call or agency, then that may not be an opportunity for you. Also looking at volumes, one of the things that we want to look at is if the individual is taking off, who are doing the duties that that person was doing when they take off. So if they're, again, making sure we're in compliance with job descriptions, if somebody else is taking on all these responsibilities. So we want to look at that as well. And also looking at exempt and non-exempt, making sure that if somebody is reducing their hours, they're ensuring they are still getting their breaks and lunches, depending upon the day, how long their day is. So still staying in compliance with the UK's policies. For potential change in pay, this is when you are reducing your hours. If you are just flexing your time, your pay should not change. But if you are reducing hours, obviously you're getting paid for the hours you're working. So, and then also, we also still have to follow the FLSA guidelines, making sure that if you reduce your hours and it becomes permanent, there's also making sure that everybody in those classifications are still looking at equity. So FLSA is also a big concern, or a big focal point to think of when we're looking at that. And unemployment. When you are on seasonal reduced hours or any type of reduced hours, if you go down to 30 hours a week, you're not eligible for 10 hours of unemployment.
Thank you. Gail Carbel with Employee Benefits. As Zetta had mentioned earlier, I'm not sure, I'm not coordinated enough to do this. If you have any questions before you meet with your supervisor, please give our office a call. The phone number is on the PowerPoint slide, and we'd be more than happy to talk with you. She mentioned vacation, for example. If you are planning on taking more than 1 week unpaid, let me back up. 1 week unpaid is not going to be a problem for biweekly or monthly. As far as your vacation and sick time accruals, those would remain the same. And as far as having a paycheck to have any premiums pulled out. So your health, dental, vision, any of those contributions that you pay now would continue as normal. Where it does become a little bit more complicated is if you go without a paycheck and aren't compensated. Say if you're biweekly for 2 weeks, you're not going to accrue your vacation and sick time during that period, and you won't have a paycheck, obviously. So your next paycheck would be used to catch up any missed premiums on your health, dental, vision, optional life insurance, voluntary insurances. So keeping that in mind. And again, we can give you those numbers if you have dates in mind. A little tip, if you're flexible with and you're thinking of, okay, that's exactly what I wanted, 2 weeks unpaid, I want to take 2 weeks off. Bridge that, look at the pay schedule and take 1 week in one pay period if you're biweekly, and the second week in the next pay period. So you can have 2 consecutive weeks, but just bridging them across 2 pay periods. Another tip is with the health credit. As long as you are full-time regular, and when I say that, I'm meaning 75% or more, at least 1 day in the month, you would receive the health credit. So you can keep that in mind with your scheduling as well. let me think. The retirement match is another big benefit, and of course, that's just going to fall in line with your compensation. If you're working for a reduced pay or you're not being paid for a certain amount of time, that 10% match is going to follow. And that's that 10%, that's that 200% match that we have on our retirement matching account where we put in 5%. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Dudley with workers' compensation.
Thank you. My office manages, like she said, workers' comp, long-term disability, and family medical leave. But what I want to talk about briefly is just the work comp, especially for those folks who are considering working from home during the summer months. As an employer, one of the things that we always have to do is follow the OSHA guidelines called the General Duty Clause. And what that says is an employer is required to give an employee a workplace that is free from recognized hazards that are causing or likely to cause death or serious harm. So what that means is we have to give you a safe place to work. That includes both at the office and if you were working from home. So those folks that might be working from home or thinking about working from home, the things that we always want to talk about is make sure that you have defined job responsibilities so we know exactly what you're doing, have a defined work time. So if you're working, say, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and if something ever happens and you try to file a workman's comp claim at 7 p.m., we're going to be asking you, what were you doing at 7, where your job that you had talked about doing from home was only for those 4 hours from 10 to 2. Also, ask for established things like lunch hours, break times, and things of that nature. Again, to make sure that we understand exactly what you were doing at what time in case something ever happened. Other things to think about is just general safety. If you have a home office, again, we'll look at things like ventilation, electrical cords, surge protectors. Is there a smoke alarm, fire extinguisher, first aid kits, things like that at the employee's disposal? Also, is there renter or homeowner's insurance on the property? Heaven forbid something happens at home, you need to make sure we got that insurance. We may also ask for a photo of the workplace. Not that we're going to come check out the place, but we just want to make sure that we have an idea of what your workspace looks like. Is there any recognized hazards that might be there? And then lastly, we would also ask for emergency contacts, especially for those who are, the kids may be off at camp or they may be working at a home by themselves. If for some reason nobody could ever get a hold of you and you're working at an office, at a home office, that we have some type of emergency contact. Might be a neighbor, might be a parent, might be somebody like that. So we can always find out what happened to you. Heavens forbid something ever happened. The word.
Hi there, I'm Ward Southern from HR. I'm going to speak everybody tells me I get down in the weeds, so I'll just get right down in the weeds and say that as the business officer in HR, I have loved this program, but I've loved it because the supervisors in HR are awesome, and they and the employee come sit down with me a couple of weeks at least in advance of the event, and we sit down and we talk about what's the schedule going to be, what's their expectations, when are they going to go on leave, when are they going to get back from leave. So really, I just have a real quick segment up there on the screen that just says, there's all kinds of things that can be affected by this, but obviously just a quick meeting to go over everything that could and might be affected in advance helps the employee feel comfortable about reducing their schedule and that somebody's going to take care of them while they're off. And then, of course, most importantly, when are they coming back? And again, I've had people come back early and they're like, hey, I'm going to come back a week early. Great. We can fix it in advance. So I'll just be real brief and say I've got a couple comments on there that are on the screen. But the biggest key is communication before, maybe during, and then at the end to ensure that the employees back to their regular work schedule, back to their full time and their full pay and all the good things in life. So I will turn it over to Denny Haynes next.
I'm a big proponent of this program. I'm all about work life, and the payroll office is there to assist if there's any questions related to holiday, vacation, sick accruals, proration of pay, because that can get confusing to some people. We don't have a slide, but we are. We will answer any of those questions if you have any. James.
So I'm just here for the healthcare side because unfortunately our business, we don't necessarily have seasonal time frames where our volumes are down. You know, that's good and bad. It's good for us that we're still able to provide coverage for our patients, which are our customers. But we have experienced good feedback. We are participating in the flexible schedules, and we have a lot of our staff, especially in the finance areas and IT, since it's all online, we have a lot of staff that have chosen the work from home benefits, and it is going well, and we have actually seen higher productivity metrics in people working from home. They enjoy it, and it's been a good program. So.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. You guys have actually really great info to share. And so James started a little bit to talk about the success piece. When you think about flex work options, there's some great information on satisfaction and improving morale and workplace fit and well-being and people just feeling like you care. So we definitely are a proponent of it in our Office of Work Life, and we encourage supervisors to consider it as a way to work with their employees. Also think about reducing burnout factor. You know, and sometimes you see an increase in productivity like James mentioned. So we really, really encourage it. Here's some best practices, things to consider when you are talking about reduced seasonal hours. So for one, do not split the pay period for reduced seasonal hours when it comes to, so that's just something to think about. Like Gail's point of making sure it's a little bit different. No, that hers is a little different. She's talking about making sure you have coverage, making sure your benefits continue. So if you are on a 2-week cycle, then crossing over in that way to make sure that your benefits are covered in terms of unpaid. So keep in mind, we're talking about 2 options here, unpaid and reduced hours. So then also, again, that's back to best practices, considering the impact on your team and your work productivity, the time of the year for your group, whatever services that you provide, wherever you work, if this is a good time or not a good time to take advantage of this, and figuring out for yourself your paycheck impact. You know, so back to talking to Gail or yourself, sitting down and figuring that out. You know, how is that going to impact you financially if that's something that you can do? Communicating effectively with your colleagues and your supervisor and anyone that you may serve, especially working with your business officer to make sure that they know your time frame. And again, if something changes with that, communicate that to them so that they know to make the necessary changes with your status and SAP system. And what else? Let's see. Employees must be in a paid status on a scheduled day immediately before and after a holiday. So when you're thinking about holidays, the 2 holidays we're thinking about right now for this season of reduced seasonal hours, of course, is the Memorial Day holiday and the 4th of July. So preferably you will not use those weeks as one of your unpaid weeks, because that puts you in an unpaid status, which means you do not get paid for that holiday. So be clear about that. You can reduce your hours, but not the unpaid, hopefully not those 2 weeks. Also, best practices, do not work if you're in unpaid status. Just tell yourself, it's okay not to check my email while I'm out. Put your out of office message on. You've already communicated and talked to people that's covering for you. You already have a plan for coverage. So you are not working. You're in unpaid status. All right. Also, there is a unpaid leave option when you are submitting your vacation time in the SAP system. Like you normally would go in and put your sick leave, your TDL time, your vacation holiday times. There's an unpaid leave option in there as well. All right, so we're at the end of our little presentation here, and just this little imagery here just reminds us the whole point of having a lunch and learn like this is really just saying the university is very concerned about you and your ability to manage your work and your life. Very concerned about that. And so because of that, there's a commitment to help you by offering a program like this. And so I encourage you to take advantage of it, and supervisors to allow your employees to take advantage of it, again, with the considerations we've already discussed. So that is just one thing we want to make sure is super clear, that we encourage this. Now it's time for questions. Who has a question for us? All right.
Yeah. Again, did you ever sit down with your business officer and talk about it? I mean, you did.
Yeah, she said that it's had somebody.
Oh.
Apparently, the system that was new and set up, it went to somebody that shouldn't have gone to, and they didn't forward it like they should have to somebody that should have actually received it. So it sat in their email or queue for a while, and then
Yeah.
finally got processed. Like she pushed it or something, or after she noticed that my paycheck was due.
Okay. Yeah. So, I hate that. I apologize that that happened to you. But normally I'm the end of the trail. Usually it's gone from the employee to the supervisor and the supervisor to me, and then I'm responsible for putting those actions in the system. That's how we handle it in HR anyway. And then so I don't know where that disconnect happened, but please don't let that turn you off, because that's, like I said, it's a really good program. Huh?
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I was just going to comment, it is a timing thing also. So it's not necessarily the systems, but if you're a monthly paid and the paperwork doesn't get through before we always process monthly, like a week or two early in the month. And so that's part of the payback that you have to do, because the monthly's already processed. So you have to pull that part back.
That was the problem. It was sitting somewhere.
Yeah.
They signed off on.
So just follow up, with the request.
And double check pay stubs. Like, and that's no. I mean, when we're in that payroll schedule, when we're running payroll, it's updated online, so you can see it whenever it's run. Not on the 31st of the month, but if we run the monthly on December 15th, you'll see your payroll results out there to review. And there's a few days where if you see a problem, that can get corrected in time.
Can you guys also speak to the need for the timeliness, again, just making that super clear of the fact that the payroll is kind of preset before it actually comes out? So what's your recommendation for people that, like what time frame is helpful for you as a business officer payroll to know that these changes need to be made?
Well, the payroll schedule is published pretty far in advance. I think we're out through the end of this year, and then next year should be getting posted pretty soon. You want to give your business officer time to get that entered in, but it is I've sort of standardized the payroll process. So monthly starts on a Thursday, finalizes on a Tuesday, if the schedule allows it, just to make life a little easier for everybody. So there is time for business officers to get that paperwork in, but I would think that the biggest part of the process is filing the paperwork to get it approved. And if I don't know what the best practice is on when to start that. Obviously it's May 10th now. So if you wanted to say, I want to take off May 6th or May 7th on that, there may be some issues. But there is Ward would speak from a business officer standpoint that he would probably want the paperwork in by Monday, Tuesday. So he has time to process it, get it to compensation before we even start running on Thursday night. Hopefully that answers the question. Yes, the payroll schedule is on the payroll website. You can search for it. It's, I think, our most popular link. We're leading the pack on that one.
So also the business officer should have sufficient access. If you call them, if it's been a few weeks and you haven't really heard anything, they can verify for you that the request has been entered in the system. So, just the follow-up is very important. So. Yeah, that always hits us a lot.
What are the main differences in benefits? I'll just throw payroll, whatever your specialty is, accruals. What are the differences between going 0.75 or 0.8 for 1 month versus taking 1 week off unpaid?
So I guess prorate versus no pay.
Okay, so if you are prorate, so like you're taking a full week off, so if you're 100% employee and you just don't work 1 week, you would get your full accrual. You just have to have worked 50% or greater of your work schedule to qualify for the vacation and TDL accrual.
And it would be at 100%?
It would be at 100%. So if you're switching to a 0.75 FTE for 3 months to reduce how much you work over that whole entire period, you would just be accruing at that 0.75 accrual. So I don't know which one benefits more, but if you're a monthly employee and you just take off 1 week unpaid, you would still get the full 100% TDL and vacation accrual.
You weren't asking about your pay. You were asking about vacation.
It was more accrual as far as like the other benefits, the health and everything, that would also be at the regular rate.
It would be.
So if you are exempt and you want to take 1 week off unpaid, or just 1 month, I mean, it's better to take off 1 week unpaid versus go to 75% for that month.
The only thing you would see changed would be your retirement contribution because your pay went down.
Yeah. But, if you're looking at 4 weeks at 75% versus 1 week unpaid, it equals out as far as your 10% match. But like Denny had mentioned, the vacation accrual would be reduced to 75% and TDL to 75% for 4 weeks. Whereas if you just took 1 week unpaid, I'm looking at him to make sure he's nodding his head. 1 week unpaid, you wouldn't receive a reduced vacation and sick time accrual. So, no questions?
Another question on that? Okay,
Yes.
Because I personally am looking at July,
Mm-hmm.
and there's 23 work days.
Mm-hmm.
So would that be at I think it works out to be 79%, would be 79% pay? Working or taking 5 days off unpaid out of a 23.
So take your monthly salary, divided by 23 working days, and multiply by the number of working days you plan on working. Did everyone get that? Okay, so the question is there's 23 working days in July. If I take off 5 of those days, how does the system prorate? And what the system does is it takes your monthly salary, divides it by 23 working days, and then multiplies it by the 18 that you actually worked. So you kind of want to look at the number of working days. Maybe June has 21 working days, and you take 5 off. That's going to hurt maybe a little. That's going to hurt more than if you do it during the month with 23 working days and take 5 off. then the proration's more in your favor.
And don't take that week of 4th of July if you want to get paid for 4th of July. And that
Which the 4th of July holiday accrual is being loaded this weekend.
see how far in advance.
It's about 6 weeks.
And if you take it early, we're gonna have to pull it back if you are off that week of July. If you don't really work the holiday, you know, we just load it early for convenience for scheduling, so people that have a busier schedule can take it off, so.
The way I understood is, if I take off 1 week, the benefits are very decent, right? In August, if I want to take 1 week off without pay, and then can I club that with vacation or TDL? Can you combine? So you will take, like, voluntary.
So if with vacation, I think the answer is yes. You could take 1 week's vacation and then add a week of unpaid leave. With sick time, if you are truly, that's tough. Like if you're having an operation or something. Okay. Right. Okay. That's a good question. Do you know the answer to that?
I'm trying to make sure I'm understanding the question. So,
It's a total of 3 weeks, and 2 of them are gonna do this.
Yes, can I do that?
I can repeat the question, but I don't know the answer. The question is, she wants to take a week or 3 weeks total off, use 2 weeks of already paid leave that she has accrued, and 1 week of the no pay with seasonal reduced hours.
Yes, that's possible.
Yes, the answer is yes.
I'm getting out my calendar and I would sit down with you and say, let's look at the weeks you're talking about, and your business software. I want to do this for this week, and this for this week, and this for this week. And we can make that happen.
But you're also only going to have 1 week of pay to pay for 2 pay periods worth of premiums for health, dental, vision. So that check could be very low.
It would be 3 weeks of,
Oh, that's right.
yeah, it's just 1 week of no pay. Yeah.
I just want to know whether I can come on vacations, TDL, and this, together. Yeah. And I have another question. So even if I have some vacations, can I still take the last of pay 1 week anytime?
not anytime.
I mean, in this pay period. Yes. So what if I want, I needed, not in these pay periods, if I needed to take without pay, can I do it?
So during reduced seasonal hours,
Yeah.
this
Yes.
time period, you could take a week without pay, even though you have vacation in your bank or sick time. And so that was the question. Can I take a week without pay when I have time in my bank? And the answer is yes, if you do it during this time period.
I see. Okay. So, but if I want to take out in November or something, I have to use up my vacation before I do that?
That's important. That's an important key. I mean, our policy. So again, just repeating the question was, can I just take off, for example, in November, I just want to take off unpaid leave, even though I have quota. We do not, that we have our policy is we try to get you paid. We want you to be paid. You have quota built up to be paid, and we want to use the appropriate leave type for you. And, if it's an FML event, we want to get involved with the FML people and such, but you just can't choose to be unpaid and except during the summer reduced hour period, which is why we have it. Any add on to that, or?
Your emails and everything, flyers or anything. I think that will be helpful, because sometimes the questions, we don't even know whom to ask, really hard. This is there, but still
I believe we
Yeah.
have a couple of questions on Zoom.
Yeah, the first one is, are the dates available yet for the 2018-19 winter seasonal hours?
We have not, but it's the same time frame. So if someone wanted to look ahead, remember I said the date is the same, the beginning of, oh, yes, I've got some. So the question on Zoom was related to, do we have the dates selected for the 2018-19 fiscal year? The dates it's the same time frame every time. So the exact date, so for example, if you were to look at the calendar, I think we started maybe December 3rd in 2017. So you would look at that same time frame for 2018. But in terms of putting on our website, we have not done that yet. But it's the exact same time frame. But I can definitely look at a calendar and tell someone when it's going to be if they needed that. Another question on Zoom?
Does the full week unpaid have to be Monday through Friday, or can it be split, for example, Wednesday?
Technically, yes, but we prefer that you take one full week. So we'd be asking questions, why do you want to split the week? We ask that you take one full week. Do I need to repeat that? Okay. Yes.
What if you're in a grant funded position? If you're full-time exempt, are there any issues with that as long as supervisors?
That's a good question. Win-win. The question was related to, if you are on a grant-funded position, can you still take advantage? If you are a regular full-time employee of the university, you still benefit from all the benefits. But a good point was made by one of our audience members that it's a win-win. Again, that grant saves a few extra dollars. But
I would verify that though with your budget officer on that grant, because if there's any restrictions on a grant, I've never heard of that type of restriction, but I would just verify just to make sure that they can't have any prorated people. They have to have full time just to get during this time of that project or grant. So I would just verify it just to make sure.
any other questions online? Any other questions from the audience? Any other questions from our audience? As benefits.
Somebody said something about maybe for the entire month.
You want to repeat that, Gail?
Not if you don't change your FTE. If you're saying you're doing a no pay for just 1 week and you don't change the FTE.
Oh, so if you're, okay, it's only if you go unpaid.
Or if you change your FTE though.
So the question was, if I work 50% during the month, will I receive the full accrual? And if you are working 50% with a changed FTE, the accrual will change. However, if you're working just 1 week without pay, or I guess you could even say if you're a monthly paid employee 2 weeks without pay, you would still accrue the same amount of vacation and sick time. And I think we had an offer. Oh, somebody wants to speak further about that. I might have misspoke.
But we were talking about the seasonal for the winter. So that does bring up other issues you have to coordinate as far as we load all of our good bonus days and holidays during the winter. During that, I think they go in maybe even in November. And so you need to be aware of anything as far as any no pays before the holidays and any FTE changes. We load them at the full-time rate, but if you actually change your FTE, the holidays that were preloaded have to change to that FTE level. So just be aware of that.
Do any of the panelists have any additional comments, anything you may have thought of or thought, this is a great point, helpful to people considering reduced seasonal hours?
I was just going to comment on the one audience member suggested that we have emails added to the handout. So I think that's a great suggestion.
Any other comments? Thank you very much. So we are at the end of our session, and thank you so much for joining us for this work-life lunch and learn on reduced seasonal hours. Have a great day.